Hi, it's Mike Lee, Swansea TV. We're in the High Street in Swansea, and this used to be hustle and bustle. There were department stores, hotels, everything you could imagine. In fact, it was busier than many streets in Cardiff today. And then it declined. What went wrong? Now it is rising like a phoenix. So let's talk to some of the shopkeepers and see what's happened. Come with me and let's talk to them now.
The high street's an interesting place, really, because obviously at one time it was the commercial centre of the city, very busy, hotels and the bustling shop fronts, and the reasons that it's not that anymore are complex, and they've been going on a long time. But they're everything from the effect of the Blitz on the city and the bombings to sort of highways and traffic development and everything being designed around cars or where cars want to go.
It's a really interesting street, and that's developed over the years. The ethos of it being a really not nice street to come down is going.
I think over the last years, obviously, most people who reside in Swansea probably know that the high street was sort of, it had fallen into sort of disrepair, but kind of poor times, and there was quite a lot of dereliction. But I think over the last 4 or 5 years, it's changed quite a lot. Obviously, there's new student accommodation has come here, which has changed the mix of people here. And I think the new business has kind of changed now, and it's become more of a sort of arts quarter, if you like, somewhere where there's a lot of creative businesses. And I think, generally it's changed for the better over the last 4 or 5 years.
Work on High Street has been ongoing now for a number of years. Over £100 million has already been invested in High Street. And one of the big schemes that is coming to fruition very shortly is behind me, the Palace Theatre, where we'll have over 300 new 300 people working there, a new tech business. And this, of course, comes on top of the significant investment in new student accommodation at the top of High Street, investment in High Street Station itself, the Grand Hotel, and a number of other key buildings up and down High Street. Council itself has obviously recently refurbished a number of housing blocks at the top of High Street, and another 25 million will be invested very shortly to complete the remaining 2 blocks.
However, even with millions of pounds worth of investment being poured into the street, people have mixed views about it, and many feel that the street has been overlooked for too long.
Well, levelling up is supposed to increase the productivity in the area, not just build more houses or flats. And to actually make it more productive, you need to bring in something which will develop commerce or develop industry. And unfortunately, we haven't done that. And I think one of the things you need to seriously think about is how we develop a sustainable commercial and retail environment, and I'm afraid that's not happening at the moment.
I think the High Street has been completely overlooked. We used to have a High Street Association, members association, which was a group of shop owners who got together roughly once a month or once every other month, and we would discuss things and talk about things. And then every now and then we'd have meetings with the local MP. And the last one of those that I remember, the local MP was more bothered about putting pretty fairy lights in the trees than they were about tackling the drugs problem.
We've had some funds invested here. We've had student accommodation put in Alexander House, and we've had some of the housing associations have revamped some of the buildings. But the truth of the matter is, there is no permanent attraction up here that would increase that footfall.
I think, look, it's been tough economic times nationally across the UK. Swansea's not protected from that. But the reality is that High Street has probably had the largest investment it's ever had in recent times in the last 5 years. I mean, if you came to High Street prior to the COVID pandemic, many of the buildings you now see wouldn't have been here. There's been massive investment taking place, creating new homes, new spaces for offices, new places for people to work, as well as investment in the infrastructure to make sure that businesses can place themselves there. And that's what we've started to see now, is businesses returning to High Street.
With plans to build new homes and office spaces along with businesses, people are both hopeful and apprehensive of the redevelopment.
I'm one of Coastal's tenants, and I know they're in charge of redeveloping the High Street. So I came down as someone I knew worked for Coastal, thought that this shop would be a good mix with what they're trying to do on High Street. And obviously what they're trying to do on High Street is create a kind of a bit of a sort of buzzy arts base, but also catering to the students, sort of retail services mix. So you've got galleries, you've got bars, you've got some live music, obviously. And so the record shop, I think, was seen as something that would fit into that. I think the street is just moving in the right direction, really. And obviously, you know, any funding streams that come in and help sort of create a, you know, develop the street and push this sort of artsy quarter notion that I think is happening here, then that's obviously a good thing, you know.
Once they built the Quadrant shopping centre in the 80s, they decided that was where the shops are. Suddenly this is no longer where the shops are. So what then is here if there's no houses and there's no shops? So while it was being officially neglected, people like us, our small arts companies, always need creative spaces. So I suppose one of the things we do, and other organisations, like-minded organisations like Elysium, is to look for the little spaces where we can get in, because obviously we can't afford, you know, high commercial rents, and say, oh, we could do something interesting there. We could make that work as a space, as a place where people can do creative things. So we kind of carve out space for creativity in those neglected bits of town. The challenge then is obviously when that's a success, those places then become more attractive, and more powerful and richer people then sort of displace the people who have been getting stuff going.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's not about one thing or the other. If you are going to make sure your city centre is successful, your high street is successful, you've got to have people living and working near where you want them to shop and spend. So that's the important part of us creating student accommodation, creating homes for people who need them. We've got around 4,000 people in Swansea waiting for homes, so it's important that the council and other partners continue to create homes that people need. And if we can base those homes near where people have their businesses, and that the hope is that those people will spend money in those businesses, use those businesses, support those businesses. So again, if we had a high street only of shops with no homes nearby, no offices nearby, they're probably not going to be successful.
As the redevelopment takes shape, people point to the street's history with antisocial behaviour and how it continues to impact businesses on the street.
There were a number of places that were places that brought in people of dysfunction, drug addicts, alcoholics, rough sleepers, and there's nothing wrong with those people, but it's difficult to conduct business when you've got that sort of person around. It got really, really bad about 15 to 20 years ago. And then they tried taking things out which were causing people to congregate around them.
To be honest, I think train stations are always a bit of a notorious magnet for that sort of thing. And yeah, that is here, but I mean, it's just part of the kind of character of the street in a way. I don't see it as necessarily a particularly bad thing. It's just a mix of people, and, you know, everyone's entitled to be here. So I don't see it as a major problem. I mean, sometimes you see the problem, but, you know, you can see problems with it. But generally, I mean, you know, you can move these people around, or you can try and deal with the problem. And I would be advocating that you try and deal with the problem.
Antisocial behaviour, drugs and other issues occur in large cities across the UK. Swansea, again, is not immune from that. But we've been working together with the police, the health services, voluntary sector, to try and make sure that those people who are undertaking those illicit activities are tackled and dealt with, and the people caught in that profession are obviously helped and supported out of it. So what we've been trying to do is to work through a drugs commission, through partnerships with the police and the voluntary sector, to make sure that we deal with those people dealing drugs, and that we therefore support those people trapped within the sphere of drugs and alcohol dependency. So again, we've seen some really good work being done on that. And again, as the dynamic in High Street changes, people will see a much better environment, which is what we've seen in recent years.
Even though the street has had its share of highs and lows, people are hopeful of its future.
The city's built around the needs of cars and not around the needs of people. We once closed this street for a festival back in 2017, and it was great to see how much more then it became a space for people where you could socialise, talk, drink, eat, meet people, ride up and down. Kids could play in the street, which of course they can't when there's cars whizzing around or parking on the pavement or whatever. So what I'd like to see is a serious attempt to tackle the dominance of cars in a way that shapes the city more.
The majority of people walk down this street when they come off the train station. I know they used to be greeted, I don't know whether it's still there, at the train station by a saying by Dylan Thomas of Swansea, a pretty shitty city. And rather than trying to dispel those sentiments, walking down High Street the way it has been and the way it still is, with the derelict buildings and the unkempt shops, it's living up to that rather than dispelling it as soon as you come into the city. I would really like to see the council concentrate on High Street, and they do enough for the town centre, and they concentrate quite extensively on the town centre. It would be great for them to concentrate on the High Street. We get people in here from all over the world because they don't know about the stigma that High Street has. And we get more visitors from away than we do local people, because local people are frightened of the stigma. So for the local people out there, check out High Street. Come along and look at what it's got to offer, because High Street has a lot to offer.